do it. I think that's baloney. I'm sorry, Gene.
It's okay. I'm doing a little devil's advocate here.
No. I just. I mean, you're such a nice person. I don't want to. I'm not. I'm not good at TV.
It's okay.
I'm sorry, viewers. I'm not.
You're doing fine.
Government can work. This is, as you said, this is absolutely essential to what I believe. It's the basic premise of what I write about, and there are also countless examples of government working. Whether we're talking about back in the most of the ones that I use are back in the 30s. But for God's sakes, the government did win World War II. Just to give you an example.
Well, and it certainly seems that Katrina was an extraordinarily bad moment for the Bush administration, in part because FEMA did work. And there were examples of FEMA as a very successful
because
agency.
It had worked previously.
Yes,
yeah, that's right.
And it had been highlighted for that reason, and so people were aware.
Bush himself had praised it. Do you remember that?
Yes,
in the debate, one of the debates with Al Gore, Bush had singled out FEMA as one of the agencies of the government that really did its job right.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Now,
no more.
One more devil's advocate here. The conservatives will counter with examples of left-leaning government still in place at, say, the city level. Newt Gingrich's book talks about Detroit. And that, describes a government that is, as I said, complex, duplicative, sort of slaving to the unions and not functioning.
Yeah.
So, there's this sort of tit for tat that can go on.
Well, that's not much of a comparison. Come on, the city government of Detroit compared to the federal government. I mean, I don't live in Detroit, and I don't. I mean, I've heard about the scandals, but the guy got caught. That was actually a very amusing scandal. I'm sort of a collector of scandals, and that one was particularly amusing. And look, I lived in Chicago for many years. This sort of urban misgovernment is commonplace. I come from Kansas City. We had the most, up until the 1940s, probably the most corrupt municipal government of all times. This boss Pendergast, he used to boast about to the press. He would boast about what he did and how he did it. It was amazing. I think that municipal government is probably in a separate category. I mean, it's structurally different from what I'm talking about, and I'm not, in any way, I'm not going to deny that any of that stuff goes on. Of course, I'm not denying it, but at the same time, I'm not an authority on it. I can't talk about it. But I would say that it is a completely different question than what we're talking about here in Washington.
Okay. Now, another theme in the book is defunding the left, which is, you could probably write a whole book about that sort of.
It's a great slogan, isn't it?
Well, and it's a really interesting tactic.
Yeah.
But I wondered if we look at our moment now, the left looks so financially healthy.
Yeah, that's right. Well, Obama looks healthy.
He does look healthy, but if you look at the last cycle, the Senate committee outraised, the Congressional committee outraised, the Democratic committee outraised, the Republican committees by substantial amounts.
But Gene, they aren't the left.
They aren't the left.
No, they're more liberal than the Republicans. But the Democratic Party itself has been pulled by the gravity of money to the right since the 1960s, certainly. This is one of the things that marked them in the 1980s, is that they decided to start imitating Republican methods in fundraising, catering to business. There's more than one Democratic leader right now in Washington that has his own version of the K Street Project, or a sort of watered down version of the K Street Project, which is the notorious sort of Tom DeLay. I've forgotten his name, Grover Norquist. Idea that they would move the lobbying industry to the right via the Republican Congress. But I wouldn't call them the left. I'd call them the Democrats. And yes, they look very healthy right now. Defund the left, to get back to the original point. I actually have back at home a lapel pin that says defund the left on it. And this was, again, the brainchild of one of these sort of conservative geniuses that I like to write about. I mentioned him already, Howard Phillips. He was the one that popularized that slogan. I don't know whether he invented it or not. And his idea was that the federal government was funding the left through all these sort of programs that people think of as being very benign, the Department of Education, the Environmental Protection Agency, Legal Services Corporation, that the money that they were spending was effectively going into the pockets of people who then turn around and give it to liberals, or people who are very left-wing or something like that. And so we've got to cut off these organizations, stop that spending, and you will wreck the left in this country. Okay. And that was, he was sort of the one that was identified with this idea in the 80s. But it really is Grover Norquist and the big thinkers of the Gingrich delay Congress who really took this idea to its logical conclusion, identifying the various institutions that support the Democratic Party or that drag the Democratic Party to the left, trial lawyers, labor unions. Now I'm forgetting the others, but there's a list of them. And the idea is one by one, systematically attack these organizations, or at least attack the avenues through which they get money to the Democratic Party. And that's been very successful. I mean, the things that the war that they've waged on trial lawyers, there's been all sorts of waves of tort reform. You look at what they've done to the labor movement. I mean, they have crushed it. What is the unionization rate in the private sector now? It's something like 7%, down from 35% back in the 1950s. That is extraordinary. Now, they haven't only defunded the left; they've also, dramatically changed the social map of our country by doing that, by wrecking the labor movement. But that's a story. We'll come to that later. But in some ways, yeah, it looked like a dramatic success story. But as you say now, here's Obama raising these enormous amounts of money. Should I keep going on this? Do you want me? Because it's not just such a simple question.
Well,
Obama, think of who he gets his money from.
But do you classify Obama as just a Democrat, or do you think that he is? Does he represent a rebirth of the left?
Of liberalism? Oh golly, it would be nice if he did. It would be great if he did. If he did, I'd be like the most enthusiastic Obama supporter ever. I shouldn't say things like that. My candidate was John Edwards. I thought he was a genuine liberal, in the old school manner.
With the two Americas.
Yeah, but he was really focusing on poverty and a lot of the issues that really we should be debating. The divide between workers and management in this country. Do you want to hear an astonishing fact? The guy who earned the most money in America last year, there was some hedge fund manager that earned $3 billion last year. When I was born in 1965, the richest man in the world was worth about $1.5 billion. That's how this country has changed, and we should be debating that. We should be saying, what the hell has happened to us? And at the same time, wages are stagnant. There's these stories in the newspaper now about this meatpacking plant in Iowa that's apparently been using child labor. Crazy things are going on. This country is, for working people, this country is going in reverse. That's what liberals need to be debating. Obama, I think his heart is probably in the right place. He hasn't so far shown any that much willingness to take these issues on. I wish he would. I wish he would confront the Bush administration on some of these things, because they really are responsible for it.
Now, the Democratic Party, as it tries to remake itself, has the model they're using is the Republican machinery, some of which you talk about, and some of which isn't in your book, but is more internal party infrastructure. But is that a mistake?
Well, it depends on what particular thing you're talking about. what fascinates, I mean, the internal machinery of the parties is not a subject that I'm all that familiar with. What intrigues me about conservatism is this fixation they have with answering to the market. Okay, and my argument, of course, is that when you turn market forces on government and on politics, and when a politician becomes an entrepreneur, and is selling himself to the highest bidder, whether illegally through bribes, and we have seen some of that in recent years here in Washington, or illegally, and there's a million ways that they can do it, whether it's having these fundraisers or golf weekends or whatever it is that they do, that's not democracy. That's plutocracy. That is ruled by an oligarchy of the very wealthy. And I would be very sorry indeed to see the Democratic Party adopt that idea of answering to the market, answering to the needs of money. It's